Hi guys, I have a question for you. What are you doing next weekend? In this lesson, we're going to look at ways of expressing the future. But let's look at that question. What did you say? Did you say something like this? Well, if you did, keep watching because we're going to look at all of the rules surrounding future tenses and I will make sense of them for you. In today's 10-minute tutorial, we're going to look at ways of expressing the future, specifically in IELTS. Before we start, a warning. There are many rules you've probably read about relating to the future and how we express it. Some of these rules can be really confusing. Like, did you plan it? Did you suddenly decide? Was it prearranged? Is it your intention? Promises, predictions, threats, and conditionals. All of these use futures in some way. So in today's lesson, we're just going to look at real personal examples to help you remember them. And we're going to look at how you can use them in the IELTS test. So we will, or we're going to, both okay here, review future tenses, practice them, and then if you've still got time and energy, look at the more advanced future tenses. For example, the future perfect. If you're not sure what that is, here are some real examples. By the end of this lesson, we will have reviewed, practiced, and compared future tenses. So, look at this question I often ask my students on a Friday afternoon. How would you answer that question? Like this, maybe? Is that correct, do you think? Well, I would say no. Why not? Look at these examples, which are better, and say what's different between these and the ones that I just crossed out. Pause the video if you want to. Then have a look at these. Two more examples. Again, pause the video and see what's the difference between these four examples. I'm meeting a friend. I'm going to do some revision. These are planned. You already decided this. This one, present continuous, is probably more arranged. Maybe you've made a time and a date and you know what you're going to do. This one is less detailed. These are unplanned or unsure. I think often gives the will and probably will, but you're not sure and you haven't made any plans. And you can also use modals like I might, I may, I could to express that. Let's look at those in more detail. What's the difference between these two? Pause the video. Present continuous tends to be 100% sure and it's immediate, it's happening soon, and because of that you've booked a time maybe or a date or you've bought the tickets. The next one is planned, but you haven't actually arranged anything. So there's a slight difference. But they're very similar in meaning. And you can use them both, sometimes without any difference at all. So look at this question I ask students when they arrive in the UK. I say, how long are you going to stay? Two options. If you're sure, you've got your tickets, you know which flight you're getting, you know which airport, you can say, well, I'm leaving on Saturday. If you're not sure or it's not planned, if it's not planned or you're not sure about the exact date or the exact time, but you know you are going to leave, then going to would be better. It's less sure or less planned than present continuous. Now, in the IELTS speaking test, they often ask you about your work, your studies, and where you live. So, this question is about your studies. What are you going to do after you finish your course? Look at these two examples and decide, are they both okay, present continuous and going to, or is one better than the other? Does it matter? Will the speaker understand both? Well, generally, yes. Remember what we said about this one, it's more sure, it's probably more immediate, whereas this one is planned, but without a date or any details. Remember, in all examples, if you say going to, will, present continuous, they'll all be perfectly understandable. So what about going to? When do we use it and when do we just say going? When do we say going to go? Look at these two examples. Again, is one better than the other? What are you doing on Saturday? On Saturday, I'm going to London. Or, on Saturday, I'm going to go to London. Again, both perfectly good. And just remember, if you're using going to in fast speech, then the pronunciation sounds a bit like this. I'm going to go. Repeat it if you want. So I'm going to go to London, I'm going to go home, but it's not I'm gonna to go, I'm gonna go. So now a question may be about your house or your job, and they often say, do you think you'll stay there a long time in the same job or in the same house? Look at these three examples. Is there anything different between them? Well, both of these, you don't have any plans, you're not sure, so you use words like probably or think, and that goes with will. Or, of course, you can use a modal verb, I might, I may, I could. And will also is a modal verb, of course, so all of these are when you're not sure. Do you think this will change in the future? Let's look at part 3 now. In part 3, they often ask you about the topic, if it's about children using screens or mobile phones, they might say, do you think this will get better or get worse in the future? Well, look at these two answers. And what do you think? Is one better than the other, or are they both okay? Remember to give a nice confident answer. Absolutely, I think the situation is going to improve. Or maybe definitely, I think the situation will improve. Now, after all we've said, are both of those okay? Yeah, absolutely, they are both predictions. So, even though it's all very confusing, the basic rule is, in most situations, both are okay. In most situations, the listener will understand you. But if you want to be accurate, be careful with when you use will, because sometimes present continuous or going to are much more appropriate for the situation, and it will sound more natural. Okay, so break time. If you'd like to continue, we're going to look at more advanced future tenses. If you've had enough, thank you very much for watching, and please give me a like. But if you're ready for more, let's move on. Now, in this part, we're looking at personal examples. So this time, these examples will be more memorable for you because you've personalized them. I asked my students on Instagram these questions, and I'd like you to pause, read the questions, and think about how you would answer them yourself. So the first question I'd like you to think about in 1 year's time. So think ahead in the future. Where will you be? What will you be doing? If you're studying now, do you think you'll still be studying? Or Do you think you will have finished your studies? You will have passed your exams? You will have left university? If you have a car maybe, or a bicycle, do you think you'll still be driving the same car, or do you think you will have bought a new car? Think about where you live. Will you still be living there in the same house next year? Or will you have moved to a new house? And finally, fingers crossed you won't, but do you think in 1 year's time you'll still be studying for IELTS? Or do you think you will have got the score that you need? So those tenses are different, obviously. What is the difference between them? Well, here are some real examples from my students again. All of these are actions in progress in the future. So because they're in progress, then you use the present continuous. I'll be waiting for my results. I'll be studying. I'll be working. I'll be traveling. I'll be living in a new house. I'll be doing my master's, or maybe my son said, I'll be driving a Tesla. So all of those I will be plus ing are actions in the future. Here they are again. All of the future continuous together. Now compare those with things which have finished in a year's time, things which will have been done before 1 year. So maybe by this time next year, you will have finished your degree or bought a new car. So let's look at those and study how they work. Well, as we said, I will be doing something, future continuous. I will have done something, future perfect. So just learn a few examples that you can say are true for you and memorize them. How can we apply this to IELTS? If you're doing general training, my students wrote emails the other day and I noticed how well they were using future tenses and how much of a difference this made to their score, because ultimately they are complex and advanced structures. Please pause the video and identify those future tenses in these sentences in a letter. Here they are. I'll be trekking in the future. Will you still be living at the same address? Future continuous action in progress in the future. And notice keywords like still. I'll still be living in the same house. I'll still be driving the same car. Look at future perfect. I will have finished, or you will have finished by that time. I will have finished my exams by then, by that time. So keywords again, the word by is often used with the future perfect. If you're doing IELTS academic, you might have to write a prediction in a graph. So here's an example. Here's the year now, current time. We're looking forward to 2030. And you have to make a prediction. Could you please pause the video, study the graph, and think how you would describe that? Well, we're talking about electric vehicles, and we said, or we could say, that by 2030, the number of vehicles will have increased. Future perfect. By this time, something will have happened. Or you could say in 2030, we will be driving more electric cars, or more people will be driving electric cars. Let's have a look at that. Pause the video. Look at the difference between these three sentences. The first one, just future simple, will plus infinitive. Secondly, will be driving, future continuous. And thirdly, future perfect, will have doubled, will have increased, by 2030. Notice the prepositions. Also notice, we're not going to do this today, this is another lesson, but how they express predictions. It is likely, it is forecast, it is predicted, and followed by the future tense. Okay, so that is it for future tenses. It was a quick 10-minute tutorial. There's a lot more to go into, but that's enough for today. Thank you very much for watching. Please let me know if you have any questions or if you have any requests of any type of video that you'd like me to make relating to IELTS. Thanks very much for watching. Please remember to give me a like and subscribe, of course. Bye-bye.